Now let's move on to motif 3. It includes the flower, the main part of the motif, and the leaves. The flower includes the calyx, petals, and the pistil. First, crochet the calyx, then crochet the petals, finally, crochet the pistil and sew it onto the calyx. The new stitch techniques used are DC 2-in-1, HDC 3 puff. Please watch my demonstration. First, chain 1. Hold the yarn with your left hand. Hold the hook with your right hand. Position the hook underneath the yarn. Wrap the yarn counterclockwise. Use your left thumb and middle finger to pinch the crossing point of the loop. Place the hook on the left side of the yarn. Yarn over. Draw the yarn through. This slip knot does not count as a stitch. Slightly tighten. Chain 1. Like this, the foundation chain is completed. Then work the first row. Make 3 chains to start. Then work 3 DCs in the foundation chain. Row 1 is done. Move on to row 2. Make 3 chains to start. Turn the workpiece counterclockwise. Work 1 DC in each of the 3 stitches from the previous round. Since this row is worked on the wrong side, the stitches are the braids on the upper left. After completing, pick up 2 strands of yarn at the turning chain. Work 1 DC 2-in-1, that is, work 2 DCs in the same stitch. One. 2. 1 DC 2-in-1 is completed. Like this, row 2 is done. Move on to row 3. Work it the same way as row 2. Start by making 3 chains. Turn the workpiece counterclockwise. Then, work 1 DC in each of the next 5 stitches. Next, work 1 DC 2-in-1 in the turning chain. Like this, row 3 is completed. Continue to row 4. Make 3 chains to start. Turn the workpiece counterclockwise. Then, work 1 DC in each of the next 2 stitches. Then, make 3 chains. Then, skip the next 3 stitches. Work DCs from the 4th stitch. Also work 1 DC on the turning chain. Then, make 1 chain. Enlarge the loop on the crochet hook. Remove the hook. Insert it into the 2 strands of the turning chain. Pull this loop through. Connect the beginning and the end. Then, work 3 chains. This way, row 4 is completed. Move on to row 5. Push the fabric piece backward. Insert into the middle stitch of row 3. Work 1 DC. Then, work 1 DC2 in 1 in the left stitch. Enlarge the loop on the hook to prevent it from slipping off. Pinch the 3 completed stitches with your left hand. Bring the fabric piece from back to front. Flip it through the chain space on the right. While flipping, keep these 3 stitches in position. After flipping, it should look like this. The chains from row 4 are at the back of the fabric piece. Insert the hook into the loop that was left. On the right side of the DC from row 4 at the back. Work 4 DCS. Then, work 4 DCS on the left chain space. Continue working 4 DCS on the left DC. After completing, work 1 DC2 in 1 in the DC. Finally, in the left stitch, work 1 DC. This way, row 5 is completed. The calyx is crocheted. Now, let's work the first row of the first petal. Make 3 chains to start. Turn the workpiece counterclockwise. Then, in these 3 stitches, work 1 DC each. Next, in the left stitch, work 1 DC2 in 1. Then, pick up the front loops of the next 2 stitches on the left. Work 1 DC in each. This way, row 1 is completed. Next, work row 2. Make 3 chains to start. Turn the workpiece counterclockwise. Then, in the last stitch of the previous row, work 1 DC. Next, work 1 chain. Continue working 1 DC and 1 chain in sequence. Work all the way to the third stitch of the previous row. When done, work 1 chain. Then, in the left stitch, work 1 HDC. Work 1 chain. Slip stitch in the starting chain on the left. Row 2 is complete. Now, let's work row 3. Start with 2 chains. Turn the workpiece counterclockwise. Slip stitch in the chain space between the slip stitch and the HDC. Work 2 chains. Then, work 1 slip stitch on the HDC. Continue working slip stitches into each of the chain spaces and HDCS. Work 2 chains between the slip stitches. Keep working until you finish all the DC stitches here. When completed, work 2 chains. Work 1 slip stitch at the top of the left beginning chain. Then work 2 chains. In the DC stitch, work 1 slip stitch. Then work 2 chains. Next, on the remaining half loop on the right side at the back, work 1 slip stitch. This way, row 3 is completed. 1 petal is done. Move on to the second petal. Make 3 chains to start. Then work 1 DC in the same stitch. Work 1 DC in the remaining half loop on the left side. Then in the next 2 stitches on the left side, work 1 DC and 1 DC 2 in 1. In the next 2 stitches on the left side, work 1 DC in each of the front loops. This way, row 1 is completed. For the next 2 rows, work them in the same way as the first petal. Everyone finish them. The second petal is completed. The third petal is worked in exactly the same way as the second petal. The third petal is completed. Move on to the fourth petal. For the last 2 stitches of the first row of the fourth petal, you don't need to work into the front loops. Work into the stitch. Finish the remaining part. Make the last slip stitch. Crochet it in the same insertion point as the last DC. Then cut the yarn. Weave the yarn tail on the wrong side of the fabric. Also weave the starting yarn tail. This way, the petals are completed. Next, crochet the pistil. First, make 12 chains. Then, pick up the left thread on the third chain from the end. Work a HDC3 puff. Start with 3 incomplete HDCs. Yarn over. Insert. Yarn over, pull the yarn through. This is the first one. Move on to the second one. Yarn over, insert into the same position. Yarn over, pull the yarn through. This is the second one. Move on to the third one. Yarn over. Insert. Yarn over. Pull the yarn through. The third one is completed. Yarn over. Pull through all the loops on the hook at once. The HDC3 puff is completed. Then work 3 chains. Pick up back ridge of the chain. It's this strand of thread. Make 1 slip stitch. Then work slip stitches in the back bridge of the chains. When done, leave a tail of about 10 centimeters and cut the yarn. Then, at row 3 of the calyx, pick up the strand behind the middle 2 stitches. Draw the yarn through. Tie a double knot. Weave in the ends. Weave a few more stitches and trim. This way, the pistil is completed. One flower is completed. Next, work on the main part of the motif. Work the first round on the wrong side of the flower, then crochet in rounds counterclockwise. The new stitches used are TR/DC 5 in 1. Please watch the demonstration. Start the first round. Pick up the stitch of the DC from the right side of the first row of the calyx. Draw the loop through. Work 3 chains. Make 1 slip stitch in the third chain from the left of the beginning chain. Three chains. Next, pick up the first row of the petal on the left side of the calyx. The second stitch from the right. The strand behind the top DC. And the back loop of this stitch. Make 1 slip stitch. 3 chains. Then pick up the second DC from the left. The strand behind the top DC. And the back loop of this stitch. Make 1 slip stitch. 3 chains. Pick up the second stitch from the left. The strand behind the top DC. And the back loop of this stitch. Make 1 slip stitch and 3 chains. The connection point for this petal is completed. Next, work slip stitches in the same position on the remaining 3 petals. Work 3 chains between the slip stitches. After completing the slip stitch and chains on the 4th petal, join with a slip stitch in the first chain space. Pull tight. This way, round 1 is completed. Move on to round 2. Chain 4 as the beginning chain. These 4 chains count as 1 TR. Next, work 1 more TR in the same position. Yarn over twice. Insert the hook. Yarn over, draw the yarn through. Now there are 4 loops on the hook. Yarn over again. Draw through the first 2 loops. Repeat this 3 times. Once, twice, 3 times. A TR is complete. Then, in the next 2 chain spaces on the left side, work 4 DCS in each. Then, in the adjacent chain space, work 2 DCS. Followed by 2 TRS. Yarn over twice. Insert. Yarn over and draw through. Then yarn over again. Draw through the first 2 loops. Repeat this 3 times. Then work 1 more. Then, work 3 chains. In this round, you will be working TRS or DCS into the chain spaces from the previous round. Refer to the pattern chart for specific stitch techniques. Between every 14 stitches, work 3 chains as a transition, with 2 TRS on each side of the chain. Refer to the pattern chart. Complete the remaining part of this round. Finally, work 2 TRS into the first chain space. Three chains. After completing, check the total stitches in this round. Then, join with a slip stitch into the first chain. Pull tight. This way, round 2 is also completed. Now let's work on round 3. Here, I'll switch to a sample to demonstrate. First, adjust the yarn tail to the right chain space. Keep the loop on the hook slightly loose. Then insert the hook into the chain space. Work 1 slip stitch. Now the yarn tail is carried to the corresponding position. Then make 3 chains to start. These 3 chains count as 1 DC. Next, chain 2 as a transition. Then work 1 DC in the same space. Take these 2 DCS and the 2 chains in the middle as group 1. Then skip 2 stitches. Work a group 1 on the 3rd stitch from the left. That means working 2 DCS in the same stitch. Chain 2 between the DCS. Continue working group 1. Skip 2 stitches between the groups. Continue until you reach the chain space on the left side. When you reach the corresponding position in this chain space, work 2 group 1. Work 3 chains between the groups. Refer to the chart. Complete the remaining part of this round. When completed, join with a slip stitch to the beginning chain. Tighten. Like this, round 3 is also completed. Next, work round 4. Similarly, carry the yarn tail to the chain space on the right side. Then, work 2 beginning chains. Follow by working 2 incomplete HDCs in this space. Wrap the yarn. Insert the hook. Yarn over. Draw the yarn through. That's 1 incomplete HDC. Now, work the second one. Yarn over. Insert the hook. Yarn over. Draw the yarn through. Yarn over again. And draw through all the loops on the hook. This is equivalent to a HDC3 puff. Because we started with a turning chain, this technique is a bit special. Next, work 2 chains. Then, in the left chain space, work a HDC3 puff. First, work 3 incomplete HDCs. 1, 2, 3. Then, yarn over, and draw through all the loops on the hook. The HDC3 puff is completed. Work 2 more chains. Next, in the left chain space, work 1 HDC3 puff. In this round, in the chain spaces from the previous round, work HDC3 puffs. Work 2 chain between the HDC3 puffs. In the chain spaces at the 4 corners, work 2 HDC3 puffs. 4 chains between the HDC3 puffs. Refer to the chart to complete the remaining part of this round. When done, join with a slip stitch in the first HDC3 puff. Pull tight. This completes. Round 4 is complete. Now, let's start round 5. First, adjust the starting position. Carry the yarn to the chain space on the right side. Make 3 chains to start. Then work 2 DCs in this chain space. Work 1 DC in the left chain stitch. Then work 2 DCs in the chain space. Work 1 DC in the left chain stitch. Then work 2 DCs in the chain space. Work 1 DC in the stitch on the left side of each HDC3 puffs. Do not crochet on the puff stitch. Work 2 DCs in the chain space. In the 4 chain spaces at the corners. Work 1 DC in the chain stitch on the left side of the HDC3 puff. Then work 3 DCS in the chain space, 3 chains, and 3 DCS. Refer to the pattern chart. Finish crocheting the remaining part of this round. When completed, join with a slip stitch into the beginning chain. Tighten. Cut the yarn. That's it. Round 5 is now completed. Next, crochet round 6. I'll switch a sample for the demonstration. Attach the yarn at the chain space to the right of where the yarn was cut in the previous round. Then work 1 leaf in this chain space. Next, skip 2 stitches. Work at SC in the 3rd stitch from the left. Then skip 2 stitches. Make a DC 5 and 1 on the 3rd stitch from the left. Make a DC 5 and 1. That means, work 5 DCS in the same stitch. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then skip 2 stitches. Work at SC in the 3rd stitch from the left. For the 4 sides of this round, alternate 1 SC with DC 5 and 1. To skip 2 stitches. At the end of each side, on the left side of the last SC, skip only 1 stitch. In the chain spaces at the 4 corners, work 2 leaves in each. Chain 3 between the leaves. Refer to the diagram. Complete the remaining part of this round. When done, join with a slip stitch to the beginning chain. Pull tight. Then cut the yarn. This completes round 6. Now work the 7th round. Attach the yarn to the chain space on the right side of the break. Make 1 beginning chain. Then work 1 SC in the same position. Chain 4. Next, work 1 cross group. Insert into the gap on the left side of the adjacent SC. Work 1 DC. Then work 1 chain. Next, insert into the gap on the right side of this SC. Work 1 DC. Wrap the completed DC together. One cross group is done. Be mindful that this cross group is different from the one in Motif 2. You need to wrap the previous DC. then chain 4. Work the next cross group. First, work 1 DC in the gap on the left side of the adjacent SC. Then work 1 chain. Next, work 1 DC in the gap on the right side of this SC. Another cross group is completed. This round is work a cross group around the SC. Chain 4 between the cross groups. Work 2 SCS in each corner. Chain 3 between the SCS. Refer to the pattern. Complete the remaining part of this round. When finished, join with a slip stitch to the first SC stitch. Pull tight. Then cut the yarn. This way, round 7 is completed. Next, work on round 8. Join the yarn in the chain space to the right of where you cut the yarn. Then crochet 1 leaf. Next, in round 6, work 1 SC in the middle stitch of that leaf. Be mindful to wrap around the chains from the 7th round. Then, in the chain space of the cross group on the left side, crochet 5 DCS. Next, work 1 SC in the middle stitch of those 5 DCS on round 6. You also need to wrap the chains from round 7. For the 4 sides of this round, you will work 5 DCS and 1 SC. The 5 DCS are worked in the chain spaces of the cross group from round 7. The SCS are worked in the middle stitches of the DC from round 6. And you need to wrap the chains from round 7. Work 2 leaves into each of the 4 corners. 3 chains between the leaves. Finish the remaining part of this round. When completed, join with a slip stitch into the beginning chain. Pull tight. Cut the yarn. This way, round 8 is completed. Now I'll use this sample to explain the stitches for the rounds 9-10. Round 9 is the same as round 7. For the 4 corners in round 10, work 2 leaves in each, 3 chains between the leaves. Work the DCS in the middle stitch of round 8. At the same time, wrap around the chains from round 9. Work the leaves in the chain spaces of the cross groups from round 9. Between the DCS and the leaves, work one chain as a transition. Refer to the chart to complete the next 2 rounds. Weave all the yarn tails on the wrong side of the fabric. This way, the main part of motif 3 is completed. Next, crochet the leaves. We will start from foundation chain and crochet in rounds counterclockwise. The new stitches used are CH1 picket. Please watch my demonstration. First, make 8 chains. Then, starting from the second to last stitch, pick up the half loops and crochet slip stitches. After completing, make 1 chain. Then rotate the piece. Pick up the other 2 strands and crochet 1 HDC. Weave in the ends. Two DCS. And 2 TRS. After completing, work 1 DC and 1 HDC. Next, in the top chain, pick up 1 strand. Work 2 SCS first. Then work a CH1 picket. First, make 1 chain, then pick up the front loop and the left strand. Make 1 slip stitch. Then work 1 SC in the same stitch. After completing, pick up the left strand of the slip stitch on this side and the 1 strand from behind. Work the symmetrical stitches below. After the last HDC is completed, join with a slip stitch to the first HDC. Then leave about 20 centimeters and cut the yarn. Then sew the leaves onto the main part of the motif. At the four corners of the motif, align the bottom of the leaf with round 1 and the top with round 5. Insert the sewing needle into the reserved yarn tail. There are no specific requirements for the sewing method, just make sure the leaves are securely sewn on. After completing, tie off and weave in the ends on the wrong side. That's it. One leaf is done. Use the same method to crochet and sew the remaining leaves. This way, the demonstration of motif 3 is complete. Everyone complete the remaining motif 3. Once all motifs are crocheted, refer to the diagram to sew them together. You can watch my demonstration first, then start sewing them together. First, arrange the motifs according to the diagram. I'll demonstrate the sewing of these 4 small motifs in the upper right corner. Start by sewing them vertically. Pick up these 2 small motifs. Cut a long piece of the corresponding color yarn. Thread the yarn needle. Tie a knot at one end of the yarn. Insert the needle from any corner position through the middle of the 3 chains. Pick the back loop and insert the needle. Then pick up the same corner position on the other motif. Through the middle chain. Exit through the back loop. The wrong sides of the 2 motifs should be facing each other. Next, insert the needle into the middle of the knot. Then pick up the same position on this motif and sew again. Next, insert the needle through the back half loop of the adjacent braid. At the same time, pull through the adjacent back loop on this motif. Make sure to weave in the yarn tail as you sew. Align the two motifs. Continue inserting from front to back through the adjacent half loops. Repeat this process to continue sewing. Make sure not to pull too tight or too loose. Keep the motifs flat. Sew all the way to the other end corner position. Through the middle chain of the 3 chains. The last stitch can also be sewn one more time. This way, the 2 motifs at the top are sewn together. Then pick up the corresponding 2 motifs. At the middle stitch of the corner, insert into the half loop. Then draw through from the half loop of the corresponding stitch on the other motif. You can also sew this stitch one more time. Then sew the entire edge. You can sew the beginning and ending stitches of each motif one more time. When done, bring the yarn tail to the wrong side. Tie off and weave in the ends on the wrong side. Next, take the yarn and connect the middle edge. Start by using the same method, and continue sewing until you reach the connection point of the 4 motifs. At the middle position, insert into the middle stitch of the 3 chains and sew again. Pay attention to the insertion point. Continue sewing the entire edge. When done, bring the yarn tail to the wrong side. Tie off and weave in the ends. This way, the 4 small motifs are now sewn together. Next, take out the motif 3 on the left side. Continue sewing with the yarn. Use the same method. Sew all the way to the connection point of the 3 motifs. When sewing, if you encounter a beginning chain, sew at the same insertion point where the slip stitch is made. At the middle connection point, pick up the half stitch and sew it with the adjacent stitch. Then, pick up the middle back loop of this motif. Sew it at the same position as before. Continue sewing one stitch to another. That is, the middle stitch of these 2 small motifs. Both should be sewn to the same stitch of the large motif. Continue sewing this edge. If the stitch count doesn't match later, you can skip a stitch and continue sewing. After finishing this edge, you could not break the yarn. Then continue referring to the diagram. Take out the adjacent motif and continue sewing. The situations involved have already been explained. You can also arrange the motifs according to your preference. This way, the sewing of the motifs is now explained. Next, crochet the border. Crochet around the outer edge of the sewn motifs counterclockwise. Please watch my demonstration. Begin crocheting round 1. Join the yarn in any corner chain space. Then work 1 leaf into the chain space. Move on to crochet 1 chain. Then work 1 DC into the middle stitch of the left leaf. Crochet 1 chain. Then skip 1 stitch and 1 chain. In the position of the left DC. Work 1 leaf. Continue referring to the chart. Crochet until you reach the connection point between 2 motifs. When you reach the position, work 1 leaf at this joining point. Work into these 2 threads. For this round, work 1 leaf and 1 DC in sequence. 1 chain between the leaf and the DC. Work a leaf into these 2 threads of the connection points between 2 motifs. For the 4 corners, work 2 leaves in the chain spaces. 3 chains between the leaves. Refer to the chart to complete the remaining part of this round. After completing it, join with a slip stitch to the beginning chain. Pull tight. Cut the yarn. Weave the yarn tail on the wrong side of the fabric. This way, the first round of the edging is completed. For the remaining rounds of the edging, the stitch pattern is almost the same as the later rounds of motif 3. Pay attention when making cross groups. The second DC should wrap around the first DC. For the row above the cross group, the SCS need to wrap around the chains of the cross group. The number of rounds and color schemes in the chart are for reference. When crocheting, you can freely adjust and add or subtract rounds based on your preference. This way, the edging tutorial is complete. Up to this point, the making method for this blanket has now been fully explained. If you have any questions during the process, don't hesitate to reach us via our website. Susan's Family, supporting your handwork experience, sharing the joy of life. Thank you for watching. See you in the next episode.